What does relapse prevention mean? What do I mean when I say relapse prevention? Well, for me, I go back to what Terry Gorski always said. Starting recovery with relapse prevention is crucial, and starting relapse prevention with denial management is a must. How to identify and manage the inner saboteur. I did this one earlier this year with eCare, and we got a really good response to that. People really like, wow, we can stop the self-sabotage. Next part is what we call relapse prevention counseling. And just because it says counseling doesn't mean a counselor has to do it. A therapist can do it, a coach can do it, or a mentor can do it. And this is where we teach people to identify and manage their high-risk situations that could lead to cravings or thinking about alcohol and drug use. Some people need more than that. They need to have tools to identify and manage early relapse warning signs that lead to these high-risk situations. And some of the people I've worked with over the year need addiction psychotherapy. Many of these people had major unresolved trauma issues and lifestyle problems that led to the early relapse warning signs, which in turn led to the relapse justifications, which led to picking up and drinking and using again. We also believe in a manualized treatment approach using cognitive behavioral restructuring interventions. And I'm fortunate enough to have co-authored and authored several books on relapse prevention that I use when I work with somebody. So I've adapted it for eating addiction, sex addiction, a little bit with gambling, not a lot, but it's meeting people where they're at. So here's what I think that I'm looking for. When someone gets sent to me for relapse prevention, I need to assess if they really have had a relapse or if they've ever really been in recovery. So what I'm looking for is, does the person have an objective understanding of what addiction or a substance use disorder is? Can they explain it in earth language to me? Now, a lot of people can. I've worked with a lot of high-level professionals, doctors, nurses, lawyers, judges, etc. And a lot of them could really get it. They really knew it. But the next one is, can you apply that understanding to yourself? Have I earned this dubious diagnosis of a substance use disorder? A lot of people don't want to admit that because unfortunately, there's still a lot of shame and stigma to addiction and mental health. So the next step is applying that to themselves. And the next thing that has to happen, and this is a biggie, is when I'm looking, is the person able to deal with the shame, guilt, and remorse they experience because of their disease, accept the painful feelings, especially the big ones are shame, guilt, and remorse about where they were and what they did when they were under the influence of this substance use disorder. Now, the next one is a two-parter, and both pieces are very necessary. Does the person have both hope and belief that not only is recovery possible, but it's preferable than the way they've been going? There's a lot of people that think, well, it's probably possible, but I can't see how it's in any way preferable. Other people say, man, I really want it, but I don't think I can do it. So they have to have both hope and belief that recovery is both possible and preferable. But then they need to get into some authentic action. They need to be doing things in the four quadrants, I call them: the biological, psychological, the social, and spiritual, to do the footwork that is necessary to keep them clean and sober one day at a time. And the last criteria is to have a track record of abstinence. And I say 60 to 90 days, and I'll talk more about that, why I picked that in a minute. So when I'm looking at someone, when I'm doing an assessment to see if they're ready for relapse prevention counseling or if they need denial management, this is what I'm looking for. I'm assessing where they're at and have they really entered the recovery process. I like to use the developmental model of recovery and relapse prevention. It's similar but different than the stages of change model. So stage 0 is when people are actively drinking and or using other drugs. At some point, and it's usually externally generated, they hit a motivational crisis, and we call that the transition stage. Now, for some people, the transition stage is very, very short. Other people stretch it out a long time, because the transition stage is there's a recognition or an imposed recognition that their alcohol and or other drug use is becoming problematic. They may not believe it, but people around them, spouses, family members, medical professionals, law enforcement professionals, or judges are telling them this is a problem. And then to get out of transition, they next move into stabilization. And this is where, they teach some valuable tools. I'll talk about some of the tasks that are necessary in a minute. And then once they move into recovery, there's stages there too. There's early, middle, late, and ongoing stages of recovery. So the first step, like I say, is I need to do an assessment. I need to identify the problems. It's impossible to solve a problem unless I understand it. It's impossible for my clients to solve their problems if they don't clearly see what the problem is. So if they're still at stage 0 or in the transition stage, this is where I really focus on identifying and managing the inner saboteur, aka denial. And I also normalize and depathologize denial, that it's the only disease I know of whose major symptom tells the person they don't have it. So if to get them into transition, I need to do some denial work, but to get them into stabilization, I have to do some more strategic denial work, and I need to teach them what we call primary recovery counseling tools, some early recovery 101 tools that they really need. And I'll talk what those are in just a little bit. To move from stabilization to early recovery, they need to have tools to identify and manage their relapse justifications or their high-risk situations. Now, people in recovery can relapse at any point, middle, late, or ongoing. I worked with people that had decades of quality sobriety recovery under their belts, and they ended up using again. And there's many different reasons why that happens. We'll cover some of them in this workshop. For people in the middle, late, and ongoing stage, and this is where the relapse prevention therapy or addiction psychotherapy process is necessary. But the other thing during my assessment are there coexisting problems, or there coexisting issues that need to have concurrent treatment. Some of them I can do myself as a licensed therapist. Others I might want to refer out to somebody that specializes, but I need to be working concurrently with the person. So this is the Gorski Synapse Developmental Model of Recovery and Relapse Prevention that I have advanced certification and been utilizing since 1991. I started working in the field in 1984. And I've been in recovery since January 1981. So a lot of what I'm presenting is both personal and professional, and I actually really work hard on practicing what I teach. And it has saved my bacon several times.